Alright guys, back again here, the Red Shadow with the next April through November 2022 pickups video. This will be the first part of my game pickups. I'm going to separate it into two videos. I think that should keep everything balanced well. So we'll just jump right on in. And the first thing I'm going to show is not a game, but it's something that has to do with games. I'm so glad that I was able to get this because I thought it was gone. I thought this was going to be a secondary market pickup and it was probably going to be way too expensive. But it came back up through Bitmap Books for sale again. I want to say a couple of months ago at this point. But this is a guide to Japanese role-playing games. From Bitmap Books. This thing is thick. This is hardbook cover. And this thing covers, I mean, I'd like to say it's probably every JRPG that's ever been released, but I'm sure there's some that aren't in here. But about all you could imagine in terms of new and old, you know, going all the way back to like NES, and all the way up to the most recent consoles. And there are pictures. Let's see if I can swing around here and show you a little bit. Like there are pictures and write-ups for all of these different games, stuff I've never heard of. There's Xenoblade Chronicles X and 2, Ys 5 and 6. Like this just goes through so much stuff. Dragon Quest X covers so many things, and so many of my all-time favorite video games are in this book. That's why I had to get this when I saw that it was available again. And Bitmap Books, they have a couple of others that I really want to get, and I imagine that just over time in the near future I'll try to pick them up somehow, one way or another. But they do some really quality work with this. I haven't even dived into this book yet. I mean, I flipped through it and I took some pictures of it and you know, just kind of glanced at stuff, but I'll have a whole bunch of time to really jump in there. And that one is just sort of an advertisement, but for whatever reason or another, the World Cup 22, this is soccer / football related, but this was included with this book, and it's really just it's a sort of a tournament style poster with sort of like 16-bit looking characters on it. It's cool. Soccer is not really my thing, but you know, it came with it, so I'm happy to have that. But that's how I wanted to start off this one, was to show this book. So let's jump into some of the games. So we're going to start with The Hunter, Call of the Wild. And this is basically what you see. It's a hunting game, you know, standard deer and bear and whatnot. Also, it does, I believe, include some stuff that's like big, like safari, African hunting. Although I noticed as I did play this for a little while, and I like it, but it wasn't the hunting game that's going to pull me in. There's a lot of paid DLC for new maps and whatnot, animals, guns. But it was good for a little bit of a romp, and I'm sure I'll go back and play it again in the future. Let's look at A Hat in Time. This is a cool sort of 3D platformer. I've had my eye on this for a while. Was afraid that this was going to become another one of those that's limited, and I would have to pay a lot of money on eBay for it. But it's been out for a couple of years. Well, 2021, so I guess it's just been since last year. I thought it'd been out a little bit longer. I was able to get it in like that $20 range, and that was good for me. So we'll check that out at some point in the future. Neo, The World Ends With You. This is a sequel to a 3DS game, I believe. It's not the actual 3DS game. That was one of the few 3DS games that I was kind of bummed that I never did get to play when I had a 3DS. And so to have any aspect of this series on the PS4. I thought I'll have to grab that. It was relatively cheap. We got Pac-Man World Repack. This is a remake of Pac-Man World, which I believe is a PS1 era game, or PS2, one or the other. A game I played before, or not played before, excuse me, a game I've seen before for years, and really just kind of thought it would be silly, you know, like little kid game stuff, until there was this remake of it, and it looked pretty interesting. And I've played a fair amount of it. I haven't beat it, but I wanted to jump in, and it was kind of fun. It has different modes to it. It has like some side-scrolling platforming stuff, and then it, you know, shifts into some more typical Pac-Man like dot mazes, and just a fair slew of stuff. It's pretty fun. And we've got a horror game, Ikai. There's a lot of these coming to the PS4, or have come to the PS4, sort of indie first-person or third-person horror games. This one with a lot of Japanese horror influence. And I had to grab that while I got a chance. I was going to try to play as many games in October for Halloween as I could for scary stuff, but I ended up playing two bigger games, Alien Isolation and Prey, so they took up more time. But anytime's a good time for a good little horror game. And speaking of horror, here's another one, The Quarry. This is the newest game from Super Massive Games, the ones who made Until Dawn, and then the Dark Pictures anthology, Man of Medan, Little Hope, and House of Ashes, and the more recent Devil in Me, which I don't have yet. But this is more like Until Dawn, a separate story that's not tied into those shorter ones. I do believe that this was, I could be wrong on this, but I think I heard that this was being made for like Google Stadia or something like that, and then the Stadia is no more, or won't be for very much longer, and so it just got ported over to the regular consoles. I've heard it's pretty decent. Speaking of another horror game, let's look at Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. I've played some of this one. I gotta be honest, I'm disappointed with it. The idea of an actual free-roaming Five Nights at Freddy's game, where you could be moving around in like in this case it's sort of like a mall, and be pursued by the characters from Five Nights at Freddy's, sounded really interesting. But the creatures are like always persistently in the little area where you're at, so you make one little stupid mistake and they'll just come running after you, and if you can't get away from them, then you die and you kind of have to reset. And I wish it was a little bit more scripted moments and not one of those free-roaming creatures that's always after you, like annoyingly so. Like I think back to the Resident Evil games where Nemesis or whatnot are stalking around the levels, but this one here, it's like you almost always can see them and they can see you, so one little screw up and you're just kind of boned. Let's jump back into another Pac-Man game. This is Pac-Man Museum Plus. This is an assortment of old Pac-Man games. Let's see, we got Pac-Man, Super Pac-Man, Pac-and-Pal, Pac-Land, Pac-Attack, Pac-Man Arrangement, Pac-in-Time, Pac-Motos, Pac-and-Roll, Pac-Man 256. It's a bunch of stuff that I've heard of and a few things that I've never heard of. And I thought it would be kind of a fun stroll down memory lane with Repack and this, and then the Pac-Man Championship Edition or whatever I've had for a couple of years. I've got a fair amount of Pac representation in my collection, so I thought that would be pretty cool. Let's show a couple of kind of indie narrative-driven games. One I've played, one that I haven't. First one I'm going to show here is Road 96. This is unopened, so you can tell that this is the one that I haven't played yet. But I've been quite interested in checking this one out for a while. It's sort of a road trip story, but it's got some pretty dark themes to it. I was really glad that it got a physical release, because stuff like this usually doesn't. Also, this one is an NTSC version. The next game I'm going to show is a physical that we didn't get in North America, but I'm glad we got one at all. This is Lake. This is the PAL version. This is For most people, this would be a really mundane kind of game. Just sort of doing you play as this lady here, and she kind of inherits her father's job of being a postman in a little small mountain town, and you get to take over while your parents are like on vacation, and you're just delivering mail and getting to know the local townsfolk. I played this game this past year, and I loved this. This was one of my favorite experiences for the year. I don't know if this qualifies as a 2022 game or not. I don't know if it came out before 2022. This one would be up there for me. Really good experience. This version that I got is all Spanish language on the back, but it doesn't matter. All the game is in English. I couldn't recommend this game enough. If you don't physically collect games, but you wouldn't mind an indie narrative-driven game that you can pick up digitally, check out Lake. I really enjoyed it. And we've got some retro memories here. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection. This collects a whole bunch of the old Turtles games. I don't know if it's every Turtles game that's ever been released, but it's a bunch. The original arcade games, Turtles in Time, the Tournament Fighters games. That one was particularly interesting for me because I remember playing Tournament Fighters on both the Genesis and the Super Nintendo back in the 90s when I played fighting games and I had friends that I could play those games with. That's cool that those games are on here, but a whole bunch of other, the old like side-scrolling beat-em-ups, all on this really cool collection. This is from Digital Eclipse, if I remember right. It's published by Konami, but I think Digital Eclipse is the one who did this. So they're responsible for a bunch of these kind of collections here lately. Really, really awesome. Let's jump back to some horror. We got Tormented Souls. Now, I've played a little bit of this one. I got a little rage quit moment with this. This is very faithful to the concept of the old like Resident Evil tank control survival horror games where saves are few and far between, and if you die, you got to go all the way back to your last save. I had not been able to find the stuff I needed to save my game, but one time, in the short period of time that I played it, and I was set so far back that I just shut the game off and I haven't went back to it. I also tried to start playing all through the Resident Evil games, and I was playing the GameCube Resident Evil remake, and I kind of had the same experience. Sad moment to be like, man, I played these games back in the day and I had no problems with this, but we're spoiled now. Modern games, do better in that to make it more accessible where you don't have to be so frustrated. I will go back and play this. I'll go back to Resident Evil remake and try to continue on with that at some point, but just happy to have had the chance to get that one into the collection. Same goes for this one. I was wondering if this would be a hard one for me to find. This is the Disco Elysium, the Final Cut. This is from I Am 8-Bit, but I was able to buy this from GameStop. I don't know if it was an open copy, but everything was here for it. So I don't know if it was somebody had traded into GameStop and I got it that way, or if it really did get more retail release. But was happy to get this. This one is a very text-heavy, narrative-driven, but like RPG that I'm not even sure if it has any real battle mechanics to it, but you can die in this game. So I'm just more intrigued than anything else about this game. There's supposed to be a sequel, but there's some shit that has went down with the original developers of this, and some of the people who were behind this are no longer a part of the company that's making the sequel. So we'll see if that ends up being a good game when it comes out or not. Now, this was a cheapo, like, budget pickup that I grabbed, I think, from Walmart.com. It's Adventure Time: Pirates of the Enchiridion. Adventure Time is an animated series that I want to watch. I'm interested in it. So when I saw that there was a game, I was like, and it was cheap, I was like, I'll jump on it. I've never watched the cartoon, but it might be kind of fun to experience it through a video game. Here's one of my favorite games that I've played this past year, although I think this came out the year before, but I didn't play it until a couple months ago. But it was the most recent installment of Life is Strange, Life is Strange True Colors. Love this game. It's not quite as good as the original Life is Strange and Before the Storm. It is better than Life is Strange 2. It's worth playing. I enjoyed the characters, the little town that you play in. It's a little bit more of a contained game. The Life is Strange and Before the Storm take place in more of the area around the city where it's set in. Life is Strange 2 is all over the country, basically. This one is just in this one little town, but it's still really, really good. I really hope that the teams at Don't Nod and Deck 9, whoever is going to continue on with Life is Strange, I hope that they will, because these games are a really good time. I definitely really love them. Alright, we got Soul Calibur 6. Still not a big fighting game fan. I know the Soul Calibur games are really good. I got this because 1, it was cheap, but 2, Geralt from The Witcher 3 is in this one. So that was just kind of a novelty. I had to grab that. We have MLB 22, MLB The Show 22. I have all the MLB games. I'm pretty sure all of them that are on the PS4. Baseball's my favorite sport, so I'll always be getting these, but I always get them when they're cheap and kind of at the end of the season. So that's what I got here. It's got Shohei Ohtani on the front of it. Then we have Arcade Paradise. I think I ordered this through Limited Run, but it was a distribution title. I've got, for my second video, I've got pretty much all of my Limited Run pickups from the last several months. This one was one I really wanted to check out because it's a simulation game of a person who has to work at their father's laundromat, but they really want to run an arcade. So since they're put in charge of the laundromat, they start to buy arcade machines to see if they can make more money doing that than with the laundromat. And so it's every day you have to come in and clean up the laundromat and do laundry and make money and then buy your arcades and maintain the arcades. It's a cool premise. I kind of got burnt out on it after a couple of days. The arcade games themselves didn't really do much for me. They're very old school. And, you know, I like the newer arcade games despite the fact that I'm old. But it was still a fun game. I'm glad I got a chance to play it. I guess I forgot that I had picked up one of these this last part of the year. This is the Dark Pictures Anthology House of Ashes. This was the most recent one of these until The Devil in Me came out in November. I just basically kind of waited for this to get cheap. The only one of the the Dark Pictures anthologies that I've played is Man of Medan. So I have a couple of these now to play through. But they're kind of shorter horror, choose your own adventure kind of series where lots of characters can die. Alright, we have Baldo, the Guardian Owls, the Three Fairies edition. This is a game with a really cool art style. It's very Studio Ghibli. It's very like Ni no Kuni and some other things like that. I was reading up about it before I pulled the trigger to buy it, and I still decided to get it. But a lot of the things that I was reading was that it's kind of hard gameplay. That's a little unappealing for me, but I'm still going to give it a shot. The animation and all that looks really, really cool. It doesn't have the greatest reviews now that it has come out, but I'm not too bothered by that. Well, here was one I've been wanting to get, and this is as a whole, this series I need to get into because I have several games in this series. But this is Tales of Arise. This is a long-running JRPG series. These are also very well animated. It's very anime-like. And for a lot of people, this is the best in the series. So I can't wait to check this one out. Here's a game I played this year that I really, really loved. A quirky little title. Had some music that was very catchy. A lot of people got pulled in by the music when it was first revealed a couple years ago. But this is Bug Snacks from the same people who did Octodad. I was wanting to check this out for the longest time. I finally got to play it this past year after I picked it up. and it was just really, really good. It's very quirky, it's very unusual, the characters are strange, the premise is very, very strange. As you play it, you're going to feel like this game is messing with your brain a little bit. But it was just a good time, a fun video game. Very, very glad that I finally got around to playing that. Here's one that was a little bit of a dud. Simulator games are such a big craze. I was talking about it before with Arcade Paradise. Every simulation game kind of takes a different spin on things. A lot of people remember Goat Simulator. The sequel came out recently, Goat Simulator 3. They just jumped over 2 because they're wacky like that. I was hoping that this was a little bit more of a fun, kind of goofy simulation game. And in my opinion, it's trying too much to just be a straight-up simulator game. So I played it for a day or two, and then I was kind of out of it. But this is Lawn Mowing Simulator. The Landmark Edition includes some DLC, Ancient Britain, and Dino Safari. It's a very serious-minded game. You can screw up a lot of different things if you don't have the blades of your lawnmower at the right height. It can cause problems. It's very meticulous. It's probably not down to the line, necessarily not down to the spark plugs and gas and tire tread and that kind of stuff. But it was I just wanted a chill out game. I just wanted a game where I could just kind of like drive around a yard and I wouldn't have to think about a bunch of stuff. Just do the task. And this doesn't really do that. So the one simulator game I do want to come to consoles on disc is Power Wash Simulator. That really blew up this year, but it's really only like PC, and if it's on console, it's digital only. So I hope a physical comes out for that. Here's a couple of horror games that I got. I believe I purchased these at the same time. They came out roughly around the same time. But the first one here is Oxide Room 104. So I thought this was just going to be wandering around this like little scary motel, going into different rooms, maybe having to evade some ghostly creatures for a little bit. But they actually pushed a little bit of an escape room mechanic. And so the last time that I played it, I screwed up on one of the escape rooms, and it's kind of roguelike in that it sort of started me over, and it basically told me, you have some information now, go back out into the motel and act on that information. So it took a little bit of the just I'm going to play a scary horror game and turn it into more of a deeper puzzle game. So I'll still go back and try to give it another shot at some point, but wish it could have just been a little bit more straight up. I'm hoping that this other one will be more of a straightforward one, and this is Phobia St. Dymphna Hotel. It's a bit of a mouthful. I don't know. Dymphna is a weird word. Could just be a made-up thing. But this is another horror game that, like I said, I hope it's just a first-person, wander around, get some scares, solve some basic puzzles, and then get out. And we have Endling Extinction is Forever. Sort of an indie animal platforming stylish game, like one of those left to right Limbo or Inside styles, I guess, that tells a story about like a fox in there and its cubs. And it did get nominated for, I think, a game award, but it was like a game award centered around Games for Impact, where kind of tell environmentally conscious stories or whatever. So I don't know if it's great or not, but it caught my eye with the graphical style, the foxes and all that. Okay, and the last three things I'm going to show in this video are three pretty cool steelbooks that I got. So we're going to start off with Beyond a Steel Sky, the Beyond a Steelbook edition. This is the sequel to a like early 90s game that I have played. I have it on my PC from one of the Steam or GOG or somebody. But that one was Beneath a Steel Sky, I believe it is. And so this is just like a modernized sequelization of it. And I just thought I was going to get this game for cheap, but I got a steelbook for it as well. I haven't played it. I haven't beat the original, so I may try to play the original before I get into this. And here's a series that, as of this point right now, I have every entry except for the remake of the second game. But this is Yakuza Like a Dragon. This would also be Yakuza 7. This would also be the last game that's going to have the Yakuza name, because now they're going to be Ishin. And there's a new one coming out called Ishin Like a Dragon. And it's going to go back into, back in time in terms of the setting. But this is the one that all the Yakuza games have kind of been third-person action games. And this one is actually a third-person turn-based role-playing game. And I guess going forward, those other games I mentioned before are going to be more turn-based or something. I don't know. Look that one up if you're interested in really knowing about it. But as soon as I get Yakuza Kiwami 2, I will have all of the Yakuza games that have come out up to this point, including Dead Souls on the PS3. This is a series I've never played any of. I've heard a lot of people saying it's kind of like Shenmue, so that sort of gets my attention. But yeah, so that's that. And then the last one I'm going to show in this video, this is Fist, Forged in Shadow Torch. I have wanted to get this game for so long. I ended up getting this Steelbook NTSC copy. The previously only copies that I knew that were out there were in that were like Japanese or Asian territories. I don't even think the PAL region had a version of this before. I wanted one that was in English on the cover. I just prefer that. I don't mind getting Japanese, Chinese, PAL region, German, any of these different ones, as long as when I look at the game, I can see what it's supposed to be. And most of the copies of this that were from across the pond were like in Japanese or Chinese. And I didn't want that. I wanted to be able to look at this and say, that's what this is. So I just kind of bided my time, I guess. But I didn't know this was going to happen until a month or two before it came out. And then it got pushed back a little bit before it finally released. But now it's finally out, and I can play this. Basically, this is a... my voice, I guess, can't take all this talking. This is basically a Metroidvania-style game. It's got some platforming, some basic battling, combat, where you play as these animals with gigantic fists and all kinds of craziness, and jumping around, and doing that backtracking thing when you have what you need to get to where you go. I just really wanted to play this for a long time, so I was ever so glad that I finally, patience paid off, and I got a copy in the NTSC version. So that is the capper for this first video game pickup, April to November 22, yada yada yada. So I will be back with the second part with a bunch of games, including, like I said, all the limited run stuff that I picked up since we last had one of these here. So we'll see you in that next video.